Sprawled on the chilly kitchen tiles, I clutched my abdomen, feeling a sharp agony radiate through me as if a blade twisted within. My young daughter Catherine stood nearby, her face etched with fright. "Mommy, are you okay?" she asked in a tremulous whisper. Despite the searing pain, I forced a calm tone. "I'll be fine, sweetheart. It's just a bad stomach ache," I lied, trying to shield her from the severity of my condition. The sound of footsteps approached. My husband Willie appeared at the doorway, annoyance rather than concern shaping his features. He was geared up for his journey, suitcase in hand. "What's happening, Amy? Why are you on the floor?" he asked, his tone more irritated than alarmed. "I think it's appendicitis, Willie. It's really severe. We need to go to the hospital," I gasped, each word laced with pain. He scoffed dismissively. "Appendicitis? You're probably just overreacting. It's likely just indigestion." I attempted to argue, but a sharp stab of pain silenced me. Willie glanced at his watch, his impatience palpable. "I can't miss this trip with Carol. Just call a taxi or something," he suggested with a dismissive wave. My disbelief at his lack of empathy grew as I tried to speak again. "Willie, I can't even move. Catherine's here. I need you," I pleaded, desperation heavy in my voice. He shook his head, unmoved. "It's probably nothing. Call if it gets worse." With that, he left, his suitcase trailing behind him. I lay there, pain racking my body, with only Catherine for comfort. Her small hands found mine, tears in her eyes. "Mommy, don't be sick. You have to be okay," she sobbed. Gathering the remnants of my strength, I pulled her close. "I'm here, darling. Mommy's here." With Willie gone, urgency gripped me. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone and dialed the one person I knew would come, my brother Russell. The phone rang, shattering the silence of the kitchen. "Hello?" Russell's voice was a beacon of hope. "Russell, it's Amy. I need help. I think it's appendicitis. I can't move." I rushed out the words, each one a struggle against the pain. As Catherine clung to me, her fear palpable, I struggled to form each word. "And Catherine is scared," I managed to convey, my voice breaking. After a moment of silence, Russell's voice came through the phone, calm and reassuring. "I'm on my way, Amy. Hold tight, I'll be there soon." Resting on the cold tile floor, I shut my eyes, trying to withstand the sharp pain that coursed through me. Catherine stayed close, her small presence a slight comfort amidst the chaos. In that moment, a resolute feeling took root within me. Willie's neglect in such a critical time was not just hurtful, it was a profound betrayal that marked a pivotal shift in our relationship. As I awaited Russell's arrival, one thing became crystal clear: things were bound to change. Later in the hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile walls and the rhythmic beeping of machines, a tranquil calm enveloped me. The surgery to remove my inflamed appendix was successful, but the emotional wound Willie had inflicted lingered. I had called my parents to look after Catherine while I recuperated. Their voices brimmed with concern, and their unasked questions about Willie's absence weighed heavily in the air. 2 days later, I returned home, the physical pain now just a dull ache, a faint echo of what had transpired. Catherine's joy at seeing me again was a bright spot. "Mommy, you're back. Are you all better now?" Her innocent question warmed my heart. "I'm getting there, sweetie," I replied, embracing her tightly, thankful for her comforting presence. However, our peaceful reunion was abruptly disrupted the next day by the loud slam of the front door. Willie and his sister Carol burst in, frustration evident in their voices. "Why didn't you pick us up yesterday? We had to pay extra for a taxi and train fares." Willie's accusatory tone filled the room as he strode into the living room. A surge of anger welled up inside me at his audacity. "Welcome back. Must have been quite a journey," I responded coldly, meeting his gaze. Willie stopped, taken aback by my frosty reception. Even Carol seemed surprised by the palpable tension. "What's with the attitude, Amy?" Willie demanded. I couldn't hold back any longer. "While you were enjoying your trip." While I stood in the living room, my voice was calm yet charged with anger. I was in the hospital, I explained, glaring at Willie and his sister Carol, whose demands often pulled him away from his family responsibilities. Carol's face turned red, and Willie looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? You're fine, right?" he asked dismissively. "It's not just about being okay, Willie. It's about being there when your family needs you," I retorted, and my frustration reached its peak. Before Willie could respond, the door swung open, revealing Russell, our parents, and Willie's parents, eyes filled with varying shades of anger and disappointment fixed on Willie and Carol. Willie's voice trembled as he asked, "Why is everyone here?" His usual confidence faded under their intense scrutiny. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my strength to articulate the hurt and betrayal. "Willie, you left Catherine and me alone when we needed you the most. I was in the hospital and you weren't there. I've told everything to our families." Willie seemed to shrink, his typical bravado nowhere to be seen. His eyes darted around seeking an ally, but he found none. "It's not just about this incident, Willie. It's about all the times you've put Carol before your own family," Russell chimed in, his tone heavy with disappointment. Carol, usually confident, now appeared uneasy, her eyes shifting between the floor and the upset faces surrounding her. Willie tried to defend himself, scrambling for excuses and justifications, but the room was thick with tension. For me, this was a decisive moment. I realized I couldn't continue living overshadowed by Willie's neglect. It was time for change, time to stand up for myself and protect Catherine. The meeting ended without any resolution, but for me, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would no longer tolerate being overlooked. The message from the day's events was unambiguous. I had the unanimous support of our families, and Willie's indifferent demeanor had crumbled visibly as they left. Willie's parents gave me sympathetic looks, an unspoken admission of their son's shortcomings. That night, as I lay in bed, the day's confrontations replayed in my mind, stirring a whirlwind of emotions: anger, disappointment, but also a burgeoning sense of empowerment. Willie's true colors had been revealed, making it clear that it was time for me to take control of my own life. The days that followed were tense, filled with unspoken words and strained silences. Willie attempted to maintain normalcy, but the air between us was thick with tension. During this time, I took to reflecting on my deep-seated unhappiness and the undeniable need for a change. The decision I was leaning towards wasn't easy, but it felt essential, like finally breathing freely after being suffocated for too long. One evening, as Willie nonchalantly flipped through TV channels, I approached him, folder in hand, my heart pounding but my resolve steadfast. "Willie, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. He looked up, irritation crossing his features. "What now, Amy?" Taking a deep breath, I handed him the folder. "I want a divorce," I declared. Willie stared at me, a mix of disbelief and scorn etched across his face. "Divorce? That's absurd, Amy. You're blowing things out of proportion," he retorted. I shook my head, feeling a surge of empowerment wash over me. "It's not an exaggeration. I've thought long and hard about this. You've consistently prioritized Carol over me and Catherine. I can't continue like this," Willie sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "You think you can manage alone? Don't be naive, Amy." His words were intended to wound, but I stood my ground. "I'm not naive, Willie. I understand what this means, but I'd rather face uncertainty than continue feeling invisible in my marriage." He laughed coldly, a bitter sound that echoed in the tense air. "Good luck, Amy. You'll regret this once you realize how tough it is out there." His dismissal fueled my resolve. I felt my anger rise, not just at his words, but at the years of being sidelined. This moment, though fraught with challenges, marked a new beginning for me, a step toward reclaiming my life and my worth. Maintaining my composure, I firmly declared, "This is my decision, and I'm sticking to it." For a moment, it seemed Willie might argue further, but instead he just shrugged, a smug smirk spreading across his face. Fine, have it your way. But remember, I warned you, he said dismissively as he turned back to the TV, ignoring me once again. Amidst a whirlwind of emotions, fear was undoubtedly present, but more overpowering was the sense of liberation I felt. I was finally taking charge of my life, stepping out from the shadows. The next day, I began the legal process for divorce. The paperwork and legal procedures were daunting, but my resolve was firm. My parents and my brother Russell provided invaluable support, offering help and encouragement. As the process unfolded, Willie's true nature became increasingly apparent. He was dismissive and uncooperative, attempting to intimidate me into giving up, but I stood my ground, bolstered by my family's support and a growing sense of empowerment. As time passed, the cracks in Willie's facade widened. The charming, confident man I had married now revealed himself to be selfish and manipulative. His true self was laid bare for all to see. The divorce proceedings were arduous, but I approached each challenge with bravery. Each step forward was a testament to my newfound determination. I was no longer the woman who lay ignored and in pain on the kitchen floor. I was reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my happiness. The divorce process was exhausting, punctuated by Willie's continual attempts to undermine and belittle me. In our meetings, he would sneer and make derogatory remarks about my parenting and my future without him. However, his words did not defeat me. Instead, they fueled my determination to free myself from his toxic influence. "Enjoy your struggles, Amy," Willie taunted during one of our final meetings. "You'll soon see how good you had it with me." His arrogance was infuriating, but I remained composed. I'd rather face challenges every day than spend another moment with someone who has so little regard for his family, I replied firmly. Willie's smug demeanor briefly faltered, replaced by a flicker of anger, which he quickly masked with a scoff. My resolve was clear. I was moving forward, no longer tethered by his disdain. I could feel that my words had struck a nerve. On the day the divorce was finalized, I experienced a peculiar mix of relief and anxiety. I was finally free from Willie, but the path ahead looked formidable. However, as I stepped out of the courthouse, a surge of liberation swept through me, revitalizing my spirit. In the weeks that followed, Willie's life began to unravel. His neglectful behavior during our marriage and the news of our separation became hot topics among his workplace peers. Those who had once admired him now looked at him with a mix of pity and disdain. His charming facade had crumbled, revealing the pettiness and selfishness that lay beneath. The news of our divorce spread quickly through our community, thanks in part to my well-connected cousin. Willie, who had always been deeply concerned about his image and reputation, suddenly found himself the subject of whispered conversations and judgmental glances. Carol, too, was not spared from scrutiny. Her involvement in our marital issues became widely known, and friends and neighbors started to view her with suspicion and disapproval. The once solid bond she shared with Willie now appeared strained and uncomfortable. One evening, as I picked up Catherine from school, I overheard a heated argument between Willie and Carol outside their house. Their voices were laden with blame and resentment. "It's your fault we're in this mess, Carol," Willie shouted, his frustration evident. "How dare you blame me? You're the one who couldn't keep your family together," Carol retorted, her voice thick with anger. Their public quarrel was a stark contrast to the united front they once displayed. The discord sown by their actions had finally borne fruit, and now they were dealing with the consequences. As I walked away with Catherine, a sense of vindication washed over me. Willie and Carol were now experiencing the fallout of their selfish choices. It was a harsh lesson, but one that seemed justly earned. The challenges they faced were entirely of their own making. That night, as Catherine slept peacefully in her room, I found myself by the window, reflecting on the tumultuous past few months. The journey had been arduous, yet it led me to a place of strength and self-respect. I had stood up for my dignity and Catherine's future. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I felt equipped to face it with a newfound confidence. In the wake of the divorce, life began to settle into a new, quieter, yet more fulfilling rhythm. The burden of my unhappy marriage had been lifted, giving way to a refreshing sense of independence. I embarked on rebuilding my life step by step, with Catherine by my side. Securing a job was my priority. The gap in my resume, a result of years dedicated to motherhood, was a concern, but my resolve was firm. After several interviews, I landed a position at a small accounting firm. The firm, led by a supportive woman who valued working mothers, provided a flexible and understanding work environment. It was the perfect fit for me. Catherine, too, adapted to our new life with the resilience only a child can muster. She began kindergarten, making new friends and throwing herself into her studies with enthusiasm. Her laughter and lively conversations brought joy and light into our home, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere of the past. Despite these positive changes, echoes of my past with Willie occasionally resurfaced. One afternoon, while dropping Catherine off at school, I overheard a group of parents whispering, "That's her, Amy. Her husband left her because he couldn't stand being around her anymore," one of them said. Their words stung, but I held my head high. The gossip and judgment were small prices to pay for the freedom and peace I now enjoyed. Meanwhile, Willie's life continued its downward spiral. His pride suffered immensely, and his once flawless reputation was now visibly tarnished. I learned through mutual acquaintances that he had moved back in with his parents, a detail he desperately tried to keep hidden. This new chapter in my life, though marked by some painful reminders, was predominantly a testament to my resilience and the brighter future that lay ahead for Catherine and me. Eventually, the truth about Willie moving back in with his parents became widely known. Carol's situation hadn't improved either. Her meddling in our marriage had alienated many of her friends, and the bond she once shared with Willie was now severely damaged. They barely spoke, their relationship strained by blame and regret. As for me, I found comfort in the steadfast support of my family. My brother Russell had moved closer to us, providing a constant source of strength and reassurance. My parents lavished Catherine with love and affection, helping to heal the scars of the past. One day, while enjoying a quiet moment with a cup of coffee in my kitchen, I reflected on the journey I had endured, the pain, the struggle, and ultimately the liberation. It had all led me to this moment of tranquility. I hadn't merely survived, I had emerged stronger and more self-assured. My reverie was interrupted by the doorbell. When I opened the door, I found Willie standing there, a look of defeat etched across his face. "Amy, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone," he said, his voice filled with remorse. His apology, though belated, validated my decision. "Thank you, Willie," I replied gently, "but it's too late. I've moved on." As I closed the door on Willie and the life we once shared, a profound sense of closure enveloped me. That chapter of my life had concluded, and a new one was beginning. In this new chapter, I was the author of my own story, free to shape my future as I saw fit. Catherine's voice called out from the living room, and a smile spread across my face. I walked toward her, eager to embrace the life that lay ahead, a life brimming with possibilities and hope.
It feels like a dream come true. A $90 million inheritance and our own company, my sister-in-law exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine excitement. When the employees noticed Brianna celebrating my father's inheritance, they began to murmur among themselves. Everyone was thrilled, and she proudly added, "Please quiet down. This is the moment my husband will inherit the company and $90 million. At this, one of the employees couldn't contain their laughter. "What's so funny?" Brianna snapped, annoyed. Meanwhile, my older brother, seated beside his bewildered wife, was reading through the will provided by the lawyer. His face grew pale as he read. "Take a look at this," he muttered to her in shock. As he showed her the will, she let out a scream. "My name is Chloe. I'm 29 years old and work for my father's business. When he was young, my father had the foresight to start a business from the ground up. It's since grown to a modest-sized enterprise with many employees. Of course, soon after launching the business, he incurred debt, and even as a small child, I could imagine how difficult it must have been for my father. Even after the company grew, I wanted to help my mother, who mostly did clerical back-office work. My parents encouraged me to attend college and pursue a career of my choosing, but my dream was to work for the company that my father had worked so hard to build. That was the first thing that came to mind when I was considering my career path after graduating from high school. Tate, a veteran employee, was the first person to mentor me when I joined my father's company. Tate patiently taught me the fundamentals of business without looking at me through the lens of being the president's daughter. I was able to learn more about the company thanks to Tate. On the other hand, my brother Camden, who's just 2 years older, went to college to study management. From a young age, he was proud to tell his college friends that his father was running a business and that he would eventually take over the business. Camden's friends would ask, "What are your plans after you graduate from college, Camden? Don't you have to look for work?" "I don't need to look for work," Camden would boast, "because I'll be working for my father's company. I'll eventually be the company's president, so I'll take my time gaining management experience until then." "So you're going to be the next president of the company?" one friend would ask enviously. "Then your life will be safe and secure. I'm jealous of you." "Camden, you have a younger sister as well. Isn't there going to be a fight over who's the successor?" Another friend chimed in. "Younger sister, I do," Camden replied dismissively. "But she's a high school graduate and a simple person. That's something you say a lot. She appears to be doing some behind-the-scenes work for the company. If I become president, I'll keep her on as long as she listens to me." My brother was blowing money and fooling around under the guise of gaining experience as a business manager. He knew that if he behaved well, his friends would flock to him. There was no end to the number of women who wanted to date him because of his position as the company's next president. My brother chose the most flamboyant and attractive woman to marry. Brianna was her name. After a lavish wedding, my brother and Brianna went on a honeymoon abroad, built a mansion, and began their married life together. This was all done, according to him, to obtain the status of company president. Brianna appeared to be content with her life with Camden, who listened to her every wish and allowed her to enjoy all of life's luxuries. I'm sure she wouldn't be interested in a life like mine, one where I work alongside my mother as a humble backstage employee in my father's company. "Chloe, you don't really seem like the CEO's daughter, do you?" she would often sneer. "You don't come across as the company president's daughter." Brianna would look at me and laugh whenever we crossed paths at family gatherings. "I don't like to live a lavish lifestyle," I would reply politely. She would look at me as if I were a moron. "I feel sorry for you because you were born as the daughter of a company's president. But you have no idea how to spend money," she smirked disdainfully. "Oh, what?" I exclaimed. "You live at home with your parents and you have a lot of money, so you don't need to work so hard. Besides, with your title as president's daughter, shouldn't the men be flocking to you?" she continued teasing. My brother agreed, nodding in agreement. "I'm sure that's true. Chloe's always been very modest, so no one would imagine that her father is the president, and apparently, she treats the other employees normally. Come as a surprise, there are still many things I don't understand about my job," I admitted. "Many of my co-workers are better at their jobs than I am, so I can't act like a big shot." "That's why you're useless," my brother said, astounded. "A boss should be able to stand tall so that he's not derided by his subordinates, such as his employees. Allow the other employees to handle the simple, tedious tasks. I suppose my father and I are the only bosses in this house," he concluded. "You should not look down on your subordinates, no matter how powerful you are. My father too." I began to reply, but my brother cut me off, looking annoyed and upset. "A logical woman is not well liked by men," he remarked. After my brother spoke up, Brianna followed. "If you keep saying things like that, I'm sure you'll never get married. You should try to make yourself more appealing. Don't you agree, Camden?" "Yeah, well, when I become president, I might fire a humble employee like you," Camden added with a smirk. My brother and Brianna only said what they needed to say, and they quickly left. My mother, who'd remained silent during this interaction, consoled me after they had gone. "You're doing an excellent job with the company, which greatly helps me and your father. Don't be concerned about what Camden says." She tried to calm me down. My father nodded, a stern expression on his face. My parents had previously expressed their displeasure with my brother's ideas to his face, but after that, my brother and Brianna became visibly upset and stopped visiting our house for over a month. Recalling the depressing atmosphere at the time, so I told my parents, "Camden and Brianna are free to say whatever they want. It won't change anything." After that, Camden and Brianna continued to live their lives as they pleased, dining lavishly at high-end restaurants and vacationing at famous resorts. The purpose was to give the impression that Camden would someday be president of my father's corporation. My father was working hard to expand his business at that time, but one night at home, he complained of chest pain. I said, "Dad, are you all right?" "Try and relax. I'll call an ambulance." While we waited, my father pointed to a drawer and told me he had a letter for me. I quickly took the letter from the drawer. "I want you to read this. If anything happens to me, everything else is up to the lawyers," he said breathlessly before losing consciousness. Despite being rushed to the emergency room, he died without regaining consciousness. My brother and Brianna, who were away on a trip, were unable to be there for my father's death. They returned 2 days later, at the conclusion of my father's funeral. "We're just glad we arrived on time. I never imagined my father would pass away while we were on vacation," Camden exclaimed. I was completely taken aback. My brother and Brianna arrived at the funeral without a care in the world, making no mention of the fact that my mother and I had been left to handle the arrangements. I asked my brother about it in private so that the employees present would not hear. "Couldn't you have arrived home earlier?" "What? I couldn't because I'd already booked a return flight." My brother tried to justify himself, without apologizing, and then addressed the employees. "Thank you all for your help, and please from now on leave it to me to take my father's place in an honorable manner." Brianna looked around at the employees, who had quieted down in response to my brother's words, and she said admiringly, "That's exactly the kind of thing Camden would say. Look, everyone's speechless. You're all so impressed, right? It's only natural, given my dignity." My brother continued pridefully, "Chloe, isn't the ceremony just about to start? Please hurry and show us the way." I was irritated by my brother's late appearance and his arrogance, but I led him, Brianna, and the employees to the meal ceremony party table. My brother continued to act arrogantly as we ate. "Isn't the quality of this food questionable, Chloe? This will degrade our father's standing as president. Mother and I already discussed it, and we came to an agreement on the food. Besides, I don't want you telling me what to do," I retorted. "This is why people have no idea what it means to be president," he stated, giving orders not only to me, but also to the other employees serving others. "You're pointless." I rushed to stop him after hearing him order Tate, a veteran employee, to do his bidding. "Oh, Camden, you're so bold. Don't be impolite to Tate," I said, trying to stop my arrogant brother. "What? They're rude people. Why should I be humble in front of a mere employee? These guys ought to have more regard for me, the president," he replied indignantly. Brianna was also getting into the spirit of things and charged at me. "That's right. Stop talking down to Camden, the company's president, Chloe. If you continue to disobey him, he'll fire you." "He has the authority," she said angrily. A man appeared just as my brother and his wife were blustering on. "Please, excuse my interruption. Your father asked me to look after his inheritance." He was the lawyer my father had retained while he was still alive. I suddenly remembered that shortly before his death, my father had told me he'd already arranged everything with a lawyer. It seemed he had been preparing for this moment, years before his passing. At the mention of the inheritance, my brother and Brianna's eyes lit up. They eagerly welcomed the lawyer into the room, with Camden saying, "Thank you for coming. The sooner we finalize everything, the better. Come right in." As Camden discussed the details with the lawyer, he stopped suddenly, his face shifting as he choked out, "Wait, wasn't my father's inheritance supposed to be worth $90 million? Brianna's eyes widened with excitement. $90 million. That's a dream come true for us, having that much in our company. The employees started whispering among themselves, and Brianna addressed them proudly. Quiet down, everyone. This is the moment Camden inherits the company and its 90 million fortune. But her words were met with uncontrollable laughter from one of the employees. Confused, Brianna looked on as my brother skimmed the will next to her. As he read, his face drained of color. "Brianna," he murmured, "according to the will, the entire company is to be passed to the eldest daughter, to Chloe." He stared at the will for some time and then began shouting, "This is not possible. This is incorrect." In a troubled tone, the lawyer said, "This is a legally enforceable will." My brother's voice became more and more choked. "What? I couldn't care less. How can Chloe become president instead of me? Perhaps Dad was simply getting old and senile." Yes, your father lacks sound judgment. A will made by a senile old man is null and void, my sister-in-law intervened. Hearing these words, I completely snapped. I couldn't let these two people insult my late father. I couldn't let anyone, even family members, bring down my father, who was a good man until the end. Enough! My brother Camden becoming president would be even more unthinkable in my opinion. I joined the conversation angrily. The words infuriated my brother. "Well, what? Are you trying to tell me that I'm unfit to be president?" I responded without hesitation. "You are correct. How can you be president of this company if you've never even helped it?" "Don't be a moron. Brianna and I even built a house fit for a president, and we went to great lengths to make me look the part," my brother retorted. "Do you mean building a mansion unsuitable for a man of your stature or eating at fancy restaurants? That's not good for business," I continued, giving Camden a disapproving look. "It's only money," he retorted defensively. "After all, didn't Father cover the majority of the costs for the new house and extravaganza?" I added. "How in the world would you know that?" my brother asked in surprise. "Just before he died, Dad left me a letter. In the letter, he detailed all the money he had spent on you and stated it would be given to you in a gift during his lifetime. As a result, your share of the estate is practically nothing," I responded. Brianna panicked when she heard this. "Wait a second, isn't this inheritance worth 90 million? Did we already spend that much? It's not fair that we got so little out of it." The employee, who had just burst out laughing, quickly approached Brianna and informed her, "The $90 million comes from the company, not from personal assets. I believe all the employees here are aware of this." "Money from the company?" Brianna uttered, puzzled. "Isn't that something that can be inherited?" "It is indeed, but the money from the company is not inheritance for the family, so I'm pretty sure my brother's share is negligible," I explained to her. She sighed, disappointed. "That breaks my heart. Oh no." My sister-in-law was completely taken aback, muttering, "The inheritance, 90 million. Just then my brother stood up as if he'd had an epiphany, and he yelled at the employees, "You want your company president to be a plain woman like Chloe? You must believe I'm more qualified to be president. I have the same amount of charisma as my father." Not one of his co-workers agreed with him. Tate then took the initiative, addressing my brother firmly. "Your predecessor, your father, was a charismatic man who founded the company during his lifetime. However, you and he are not the same person." My brother, clearly offended, exclaimed, "What?" Tate continued, "What you have is arrogance, looking down on us, not charisma." "Camden, you may be an employee of our company, but we, the employees, rarely see you at work." "That's because I don't have time to do any work for the company," he said defensively. "I was too busy networking with others. I couldn't have time to do work anyone could do." Tate sighed, replying, "You call going on trips and having fun at night networking? Isn't that enough?" He then addressed everyone. "In that regard, Chloe worked hard every day to learn more about the company while performing her unobtrusive behind-the-scenes duties. I sense the same sincerity in her as in your father. Chloe is the right fit for this position, according to all of us at the company," he concluded. The other employees nodded enthusiastically in response to his words. I was moved, and responded, "Thank you very much. To be honest, I'm surprised by the suddenness of the news, but having witnessed my father's enthusiasm for the company firsthand, I care about it just as much as you do. I look forward to your continued assistance." The employees warmly applauded as I bowed deeply. Encouraged by the applause, I said firmly, All of you here are important friends who have helped our business. Anyone who ignores them is unfit to be an employee, let alone the company's president. You can be fired by the president." My brother became irritated upon hearing this. "What in the world are you on about? I'm your brother. What exactly are you on about? You even said that if you became president, you would fire me, brother," I replied sharply. "Oh," he uttered sheepishly. "I can't afford to pay a salary to an incompetent employee simply because he's family," I added. My brother's face contorted with disbelief. "This is completely absurd. Someone, please speak up," he called out, looking around with a pitiful expression, practically begging for support. But the employees only returned cold stares. Realizing that no one was on his side, my brother and Brianna fled the scene. After that, Camden lost his job and survived on the small inheritance he had received, but the funds quickly ran out. One day he approached me asking, "Can you lend me money, Chloe?" I shot him a cold glare, bringing him down instantly. I was disgusted by my brother who, even after being fired, did not try to find a new job and was still relying on his family to help him. I told my mother flatly, "Do not give my brother any money." His friends, who had once been so supportive, abandoned him after learning that he had lost his position as president to his sister. When Brianna married my brother, she had been planning to be the wife of the company president, and not a single one of her friends seemed to sympathize with her. When their living expenses became unsustainable, my brother and his wife decided to sell their mansion. The money from selling their house may have allowed my brother and his wife to relax and resume their previous lifestyle. However, without any income, my brother and his wife's savings quickly ran out. When they had nothing left to sell, they could no longer pay their living expenses. When they finally decided to give up and work, no one would hire them because they had never worked a day in their lives. Camden was eventually able to find a part-time job at a convenience store. Now he is working there, unfamiliar with the duties, and has been told that his work isn't adequate by other part-time employees, who are much younger than he is. Brianna, too, can no longer be a full-time housewife as she used to be. She has joined the part-time housewives she used to mock, now working as a cashier at a supermarket from morning to night for a low monthly salary. I, on the other hand, am using what I've learned from my behind-the-scenes work to help the company. Tate and the other employees have been working with me, and the company has been steadily growing. My brother's case may have actually strengthened employee unity. I vowed to continue working with my mother to grow the business in order to bring more joy to my father in heaven.